Why is someone that looks like a man and is male entitled to the use of like women's spaces? Whose opinion really matters on this at the end of the day? Starts with a W. We've all forgotten whose spaces these actually are. And we are guests at best. I always hear this argument among trans women. It always gets me a little put out. It's always about their comfort, what they want, but no one's thinking of the feelings of the women, their comfort, how they feel, and that gets me cross. To be honest, that type of energy screams man all day long, that entitled attitude. I think we as women are generally accepting. We shouldn't be told who has the right in our spaces.
You're anti-trans.
Oh, chair stream, I'm gonna get Ethan Klein. H2 watching and only 40 likes. We need more likes. We just need more. It's just how it is. Listen. Make sure you like the stream. Check the links in my description. Don't forget, you can super chat now on YouTube. You can join the channel. You can give memberships, etc. This is obviously right up my street. I think I'm going to be very interested in this particular subject. Do trans women need to pass to use the women's bathroom? Alexis Blake reacts. Now, my instinct is saying, well, yes, obviously. If you don't pass, what women are seeing, if you're a male person in their bathroom, is a man using the women's bathroom. And they're not necessarily going to be happy about that. So yeah, me personally, I think you do need to pass. Someone like this might get away with it. I don't know what she looks like in real life. I don't know what Alexis Blake looks like when stood next to, like, women. You know what I mean? But yeah, let's see what Alexis Blake's takes are on this.
I think to use the women's bathroom, there has to be some element of a transition to really show that the women in there, that you are a genuine trans woman and you are transitioning.
I think that's a terrible take. Obviously, if there is some element that you're making an effort, you might still just look like you're a effeminate male or someone trying to use the women's restroom and fly under the radar when you shouldn't actually be there. But hey, listen, WD-40. I don't know if I have any, but I'll have a look.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Alexis Blake. I am a trans woman and I share my life stories and opinions on social media. Welcome back and welcome if you're new here. Hello. First things first, new background. What do you think? We were trying to go for something more like cozy, chilled vibes rather than like super harsh, bright and clinical. So let me know. I have a lot less lights on me, which is a lot nicer, even though it's still really hot in the UK today and I'm very hot and sweaty. Before we dive into this video, I have a question. I just found myself in like a corner of the internet that was having lots of different conversations about me, not very nice ones, let's say, which is fine. I can handle, honestly, genuinely fine. I saw a couple of themes running within these conversations about how since I've had my face surgery, I've changed. Since starting YouTube, I've changed. Since this happened, I'm different, or my opinions have changed.
Yeah, people, it was the Supreme Court ruling that she got like emotional over. A lot of people are saying that she's like changed. I don't know if I really agree.
What I'm trying to say is people are sort of analysing and critiquing me, which is, of course, absolutely fine. I do it to others, so I would expect it back. Would you guys want me to react to some of these like comments?
She didn't change, we saw through the facade. I mean, I don't know how much it is a facade. I think this person might genuinely be a bit of a people pleaser. And listen, if you're able to make some money off of being so, then that's fair enough, listen. That's kind of my critique though, is like, this person tends to sit on the fence an awful lot.
So I'll relook at my old content or see if I have changed and if my opinions have changed. Let me know in the comments below and I can absolutely do that if that's something that you want. For those of you who still are here and still enjoy my content, thank you. Let's jump into today's video. It's going to be an interesting one. I'm going to genuinely...
To be fair, we clock many trans women anyway. Making the effort tells me personally the reason they're in this bathroom is dysphoria, not kink fetish, to feel safer. Yeah, I can understand that. That's why I don't completely disagree with what she's saying. But I think you do have to be able to fly under the radar. And if you don't, then there are going to be people that are going to be bothered by you being there, for sure.
I'm very divided with this one. It's a very nuanced conversation. It's a very nuanced specific topic. It's to do with trans women in the bathroom, so it's always going to be a little bit divisive, isn't it? Let's watch the original clip before we look at how other trans creators have reacted to it.
And no shade, but if you're not a passing trans woman, you should not be using the women's restroom. Or if you don't put any effort in your transition, use the family restroom. You're not allowed in the women's restroom. Too much fucking confusion. Just being realistic.
One thing I want to point out, like before we go into the context of what this trans woman's saying is, look how close this text is to the edge of the screen. It's going to play a part in a minute. Can you see that the T is right on the edge? It's almost touching here. Let me find someone's reaction to the video. See, the only thing is with the reactions, they've just reacted to the start snip and then cut it. So I don't know what, it's probably really hard to make out, but the T is closer in on the video. And what that looks like to me is that it's been filmed, posted, and then recropped and reshared. So on this screenshot of this reaction, sorry Liam, if you could put it on the screen for me, this has got 1,173 comments, this video. This is the original, I believe, here, but we don't see it all. When I go to the video that I've just been watching, it's only got 594 comments. So I know that this creator has posted something, it's been not taken super well, and then they've pulled it down, snipped it and reshared it. I just want to put that out there in the world right now before we move on to the actual critique of what she's saying. Does that make sense? Sorry, I feel like I'm getting very detective recently. I feel like I'm becoming like a social media sleuth.
She can't cook, hey, maybe. I don't know. I would like to see someone like this being a bit more candid and just kind of saying what they think instead of hedging their bets. That's kind of how I feel watching this. But Alexis Blake isn't that bad, honestly. Like, she says some stuff I agree with, some stuff I disagree with. This isn't like TRA Central. And you can tell because their audience is like, there's a lot more of a conversation. There's a lot more differences of opinion.
Oh. Right. What I will say straight out the gate before we look at some people's reactions to this is there's two things I'm taking away from what she's saying. The first thing she says, if you don't pass, you shouldn't be in the women's restroom. And then the second thing that she said was, if you're not...
I mean, the other thing to consider is like, we kind of moved the focus away from being stealth and like passing and looking the part and like flying under the radar. We went from that to being entitled to certain things because we identify as certain things and identity somehow being innate or something like that, and like an immutable characteristic, which it just isn't, unfortunately. That's just nonsense. I think that has played a part in why there's so much scrutiny now on trans people using women's toilets. And I think it could cause like backlash. So I can see why people are now saying, hey, if you're not passing, you probably shouldn't be using the women's toilet.
Putting any effort into your transition, you shouldn't be in the women's restroom, which I look at these as two different things. First one, I'll take this one over here. If a trans woman doesn't put in any effort into their transition, I agree, shouldn't be using the women's bathroom. I think to use the women's bathroom, there has to be some element of a transition to really show that the women in there, that you are a genuine trans.
Oh, the thing with the panic button thing was it was like non-tent to begin with. Like, she didn't watch most of the video. She found a couple of like mildly offensive things. It was like, it didn't work.
Woman and you are transitioning. The other statement's a bit more of a grey area and it's a lot more nuanced, because with the statement, if you can't pass, you shouldn't be using a women's bathroom, because there's drama coming in a moment, by the way, with how people reacted to this. But if by saying that statement as a whole, like some say I don't pass, like I've seen many comments.
Yeah, the other thing is like, there is an entitlement. There is people saying, oh, well, so only passing people can do this, that, and the other. Well, life's not fair. You're trying to live as the other sex. You might not resemble the other sex. Life's not fair. There might be certain privileges that some trans people have by virtue of having favorable genetics to living as the other sex that you don't have. Sometimes life isn't fair. That's why we need to move away from this like entitlement, you know what I mean?
By the way, with how people reacted to this. But if by saying that statement as a whole, like some say I don't pass, like I've seen many comments where people start to disagree with me and my opinions, they go straight for my hands and say those massive man hands are distracting, look at those spades, and then you could say I don't pass. So who decides who passes as well? Again, it's very subjective.
It's subjective, but then if you're in a women's toilet, for example, that means a lot of different people are going to see you and have a lot of different opinions. Someone might not have an opinion you like, and they might see you as a man using a bathroom and be suspicious of that, you know what I mean?
To that bit. So there's my immediate opinion out the gate. Half and half, split down the middle. But there was more to the video, but I can't find it. Let's react to one of the first creators and see what they had to say about this trans woman.
I haven't seen this video going around lately. This woman, she's a trans woman specifically, basically said if you are not a passing trans woman, you should not be allowed in the women's restrooms. Then she started going down a whole list of what would make you ineligible. The three that actually stood out to me was facial hair, right? The other one, your height, nothing over 6 foot, right? Then the last one, big back. Let's go through this real quick. I'm gonna be honest with you because I don't see everybody trying to be nice to her. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be nice to you. Ma'am, you straight disqualified biological women as well, specifically black women, because a lot of black women have.
Well, I think they're not disqualifying biological women because they already said they're talking about trans women. You can say, well, some biological women have these features as well, but they're not male. They're not trans women. You can't really exclude women if you're not talking about women to begin with, you know?
Have all of those things you just named. No shade. Let's go ahead and keep that above. Correct me if I'm wrong, but PCOS, The side effect of having PCOS, not everybody has it, but most do, has to do
We are kind of saying, like, you get women that are over 6 foot, stuff like that. Having facial hair because you're male is just not similar to having facial hair because you have PCOS. And if you've got visible facial hair, then that's going to be a sign to a lot of people that you don't really take your transition very seriously. And that you're not really bothered about the fact that you're using a women's bathroom when you're visibly male by virtue of having facial hair. Which people aren't going to look at you and think, oh, they might have PCOS, unless everything else about you is very feminine, which I'd be surprised if that's the case for almost any trans woman showing their facial hair. So I don't know. I don't think this is a great point, to be honest.
with you growing facial hair. There's a lot of women that will just let it grow. We've seen that on multiple occasions because they don't
But they're not trans women.
feel like shaving it.
The other thing is, I've seen women with facial hair before. It's very obvious that they're still female, you know?
It becomes too much after a motherfucking point. Height. There is a lady in this world, if I'm not mistaken, again, correct me if I'm wrong, that lady is 7 foot tall. She is the tallest lady in the world. There are biological women that are well over 6'2". What the fuck? Like, so you disqualified them real quick.
Well, no, they didn't disqualify them because they're talking about trans women, but sure. You could argue you're holding trans women to a higher standard than women, but I don't know, man. You're trying, like I said, you're trying to pass off as the other sex. Alternatively, you're going to make people uncomfortable.
Last but not least, the big backs. And I'm thinking, you talking about my PHAT, pretty hot and thick girls. I thought you were talking about them, and I'm like, hold on, bitch, they just eat good, relax. But you ain't talking about them. No. You talking about the girls that work out. The girls that have big, manly, strong backs from the back and shit. I want to let you know something. There are women that like to work out. What the fuck? You have no right to talk about nobody's shit when you had to go get surgeries to pass.
A woman with PCOS will still sound like a woman, have a woman's figure. Yeah, like, it's not a one-to-one comparison. And clearly, those trans people, they don't have PCOS. They grew facial hair because they're male. And people are going to see you. And that's going to make them think you're a male and that you shouldn't be there. So, like, we're not really engaging, I don't think, with, like, the actual crux of the matter. And we're kind of pushing an air of entitlement. Well, women can very occasionally grow facial hair. So it's fine for you to be a bloke with a beard going into the women's toilet. Like, it doesn't really work that way.
I have no issues with any that got surgeries. I really don't, because I'm trans and I don't mind. I will never get them, but if that's what you gotta do to make sure you feel good, that's you, right? But you damn sure not gonna talk about nobody else's shit if you went to go get them. Like
if you start talking to someone in a women's toilet and that leads them to think you're a male, that doesn't mean that, therefore, any deep-voiced woman is gonna get like instantly clocked or thought to be a male or shouldn't be allowed. Like, it's like a combination of factors. You can't just isolate something and say, well, women can have that. Like, well, they don't in general. It's about not making people uncomfortable, ultimately. It's about blending in.
no shade, I'm starting to get it. Y'all just want hyperfemininity to be normalized.
We get the sense that she's disagreeing with her. I think it's an interesting point of view to look at.
Really? Wow.
How that sentiment would affect women as well, biological women in there, because if they have something that's clocky, that might not fall in society's eyes of what being a woman is. Not my ideal.
I mean, I think all that's retarded. Like, as well, let's say you do have a woman that has one of those, like, features, and you challenge her because you didn't really look very closely. And then they speak to you. You get to hear what their voice sounds like. You probably see them a bit better. Most likely what's going to happen is you're going to realize they're a woman and apologize and move on.
Ideologies, societies, then that is a bit unfair, definitely. So I'm very on the fence with it because I feel like, yes, I agree that we shouldn't be policing trans women's passability, but there should be an element of transition to show.
But we shouldn't be policing women's passability. Who is actually policing women's bathrooms? This isn't really something that trans women should be telling everyone else how to think about. It should really be how women feel about it, honestly.
That you are a trans woman, I think, if that makes sense. I'll ask now, comment below what you think about this whole thing, because we have another creator to react to who went into a lot more detail, and I find it very interesting to sort of look at how other trans women are perceiving this. What I will say is,
yeah, don't worry about how any women think about it, you know what I mean? The full face makeup is now something that makes me suspect trans. Yeah, Jesus Christ. I mean, I used to do the same thing. I don't want to spend like half an hour plus doing my makeup and spending God knows how much money on like foundation and shit like that anymore, so I don't do it. I've had enough of my facial hair removed to where it's not really visible, certainly on camera.
I think it is unfair to, because not every trans woman can pass, and to be able to pass and go around the world undetected.
Yeah, not everyone can pass, and that's life. Sometimes it's just not fair. Sometimes you're not going to be able to get what other trans people have because they are able to pass and you're not. Life's not fair, unfortunately. We can't really force equality in that way.
If you can afford the surgeries, you have the right healthcare, if you transition at the right time, if your natural genetics align with being able to pass, that's great for you, but then not everyone can have that. Not everyone has the luxury of that. So I think it's unfair to treat those less than because of that. Let's watch another little clip of...
Are we treating them as less than? Or are we saying that ultimately what matters is whether you're going to make women uncomfortable or not? Because that's not the same thing. And it's very interesting how we're practically excluding them from the conversation about their toilets and just listening to other trans people. It doesn't matter whether or not, you know, passing privilege is a thing. It doesn't matter whether or not it matters how much money you have. It doesn't matter how much money you have, what you're able to get done. What matters is the end result. Are you going to be able to use those spaces and not make people uncomfortable? Some people are going to be able to, some people aren't. Life isn't fair. There's no point trying to push for equality in this regard, because there's always going to be women that aren't comfortable with males in their spaces. And then it becomes, well, are you going to be noticed as a male?
Not everyone has the luxury of that, so I think it's unfair to treat those less than because of that. Let's watch another little clip of another trans woman who has some opinions on this as well.
Yeah, I find that very entitled, to be honest. Shouldn't matter. Some people are going to get around easier in life than others. Pretty privilege in general is a thing. Trans people experience that too. It's how shit goes.
You should not be using the women's restroom.
I have so many things to say, but I need to be mindful of what I say and the language that I use because TikTok is very strict. Now, this is what you call privilege. Not everyone has access the way that you do. This new generation...
Well, it's a privilege to be able to use like opposite sex bathrooms and it not be a problem. That is a privilege. Some people are going to have that privilege and some aren't, because what matters is whether you resemble the other sex.
Of trans women feel like, oh, because everything is handed to me, I'm able to get access to healthcare easier. I'm able to get surgeries easier, that it's so easy to just transition. Not everyone has the access that you do. I'm sorry. Not everyone is able to put on a wig and makeup the way that you are. It doesn't work like that. We're living in 2025 where people have access, but back then people didn't have access. And some people still don't have access.
What the fuck are you talking about? Like, I don't know about in other countries. In the UK, it was substantially easier to access healthcare for trans people 10 years ago. I was talking about this on Jack Jewel yesterday. When I started my transition, I was referred at the beginning of 2015. It took 10 months for me to get my first appointment at the London GIC. The wait nowadays on average is about 6 years. It's like, what are we talking about? Maybe it's a bit different in the US. Maybe a lot more providers are around now than there were 10 years ago. But people talk about wait times in the US as well.
That you do. I'm sorry. Not everyone is able to put on a wig and makeup the way that you are. It doesn't work like that. We're living in 2025 where people have access, but back then people didn't have access. And some people still don't have access. It's no shade. There are a lot of people in America that don't have access to these things. So before you sit...
So maybe they just shouldn't be using the women's toilets. Again, we're not considering how women feel. All we're doing is saying, well, you can't say that because some people can't access healthcare, that means that everyone should be allowed to use the same stuff. Everyone should be allowed to use the women's toilet. What, do women get a say in this?
Sit there and decide to open up your mouth and speak about people who are not passing going into a women's bathroom.
Yeah, because it might make people uncomfortable.
First of all, you might be a little passing, but I can still tell that you're trans. So you might want to slow your roll before you go on a tangent.
I know, right? Liam's just come in the room and he's like, oh, calling someone out like that, brutal. But what I will say from my perspective,
That really wasn't that brutal.
as an English trans woman, the access we have here isn't great, and a lot of trans people do
Yeah, it used to be way better even.
it privately because the waiting times.
I wonder if there's a long wait because there's more people wanting it. Yes, there is. Like in the UK, we haven't really like scaled up the amount of services to match. The services that have come up in the time span that I'm talking about have been things like the Tavistock Clinic, which have been like rushing people through, treating people that shouldn't have been treated. And obviously the inevitable happened, someone sued. And like ultimately it became trendy. It became a thing that a lot of people have decided is going to fix their problems when it probably won't. So it's massively oversubscribed now, you know what I mean?
So long. I just want to make, because I think in that sentiment, she kind of made it sound like transitioning's easy to do. And I don't think it's easy, but it's definitely easier in different places around the world for different people. That's what I wanted to say there. I kind of agree. I kind of agree with her on that just looking at that one phrase, if you don't pass, you shouldn't be in the women's bathroom.
Yeah, why do people think this though? Whose opinion really matters on this at the end of the day? Starts with a W. Shouldn't be a debate. I understand some people can't pass, but women shouldn't have to feel uncomfortable in that space just because a trans woman doesn't pass. Exactly. Jesus Christ. I mean, Alexis's audience is usually at least somewhat reasonable. But like, why aren't we like centering this conversation around the people whose bathroom it's supposed to be? Why aren't we centering this conversation around the people who are much more likely to be victimized by the other sex? And the other sex are the one now saying, well, we want access to your spaces. We need to center these conversations around women. All we've heard from is trans women. Well, trans people can argue with each other over how much you should be passing before using the women's bathroom. But ultimately what matters is how other people feel using a bathroom with you when you're not the correct sex to be in there. You know what I mean? And to my mind, I think if you resemble the other sex enough, it's probably fine. But at the same time, I'm also trans. You know, I'm also a male person. Once again, I'm a person who these bathrooms aren't specifically for.
I agree that it's not fair to generalize that as a whole. Like I said earlier in the video, it's looking at someone as if they are putting in the effort. Are they trying to not necessarily pass?
Because you're kind of telling women how they should be doing it at this point. You know what I mean?
But trying to present as feminine.
And I think honestly, most women do feel this way, but you gotta be careful with this, I think.
As possible, or as their ideologies of what a woman is, let's say. Let's watch a little bit more.
Trying my best not to be angry and put myself in a negative space, but this gets me riled up because I just don't understand how you can think like this being a trans woman.
Well, it's very simple. If you look like a man, you probably shouldn't be in the women's bathroom. Why is that hard to say? Why is someone that looks like a man and is male entitled to the use of like women's spaces? That's the whole problem. Like, why are none of these people like talking to women about this kind of thing? I guess I'm not either, but I feel like I don't need to because I have the right perspective on this. We've all forgotten whose spaces these actually are. And we are guests at best.
Now, my thing is, if you weren't at all passing, you would not be saying this. You would want to go into the women's bathroom.
But you probably shouldn't because you're going to make people uncomfortable. How many fucking trans women does it take to understand this? It's so fucking annoying. Oh, I can hear the one brain cell collective bouncing around all these different people. I can hear it. You know what I mean? Like, fuck me. You're all so entitled. Think about the actual people who these are for. Think about how you would feel if you were using the women's bathroom and a straight up man just walked in. Because that's what it looks like to a lot of these women.
If your hormones weren't being as effective as they are, you would still want to go into the women's bathroom. So if you didn't have surgeries or makeup or wigs, you would still want to go into the women's bathroom.
Why? Why should that be their privilege, their rights? Why should they be entitled to that?
You identified as a woman, yes or no? Or wigs, you would still want to go into the women's bathroom if you identified as a woman, yes or no? So don't bash other people because of...
Well, how do you know that that other person wouldn't say, well, if I didn't think I passed, I wouldn't use the toilet. I wouldn't use the women's. How do you know they don't think that?
The way that they show up in their transness, just because it doesn't look like the way yours show up, okay?
But why does that mean that they're entitled to use women's spaces and they don't look like women? We're just completely missing the point, completely ignoring it. It's all very well giving all this gay male energy, but like actually engage with the point. Actually think about how the actual people whose fucking bathroom it is feel.
Everyone is not you. Worse yet, the fact that you're a black trans woman and given all of this is really like, it's fuming me. And I'm like, ooh, anytime, anything.
Also, black trans women in particular are allowed to say certain things. You're like, weirdly like self-racist. You're black too, bro. You can speak your mind. That person's speaking their mind. Instead of having a go at them because of their fucking identity and because of idpol, try actually just engaging with their actual argument. Try actually thinking for 2 seconds about what they're actually saying.
Thing like this comes across my feed, I'm always going to speak on it because it's problematic as and you have cis people looking at us like something's wrong with us because they don't even...
Yeah, I'm trans and I'm looking at you as if there's something wrong with you for sure.
Want you in the restroom as a slightly passing trans woman. They don't want you in the restroom. So for you to open your mouth to say that someone who's not as passing as you should not be in the restroom.
She went hard on her. It's her opinion, so she's obviously completely entitled to it. One thing that I think is really interesting that she said is if that girl in the video didn't pass or somewhat pass in her words, she would still want to go into the...
Yeah, that's wild speculation. They don't know that. That person might literally have been using men's bathrooms up to the point where they felt they passed well enough.
women's bathroom. So if she hadn't had the access to surgery, didn't have the great makeup, if her hormones hadn't been as effective, she would still want to use the women's bathroom. And I do think that's 100% true. So,
well, how would you know? Has that person talked about it? Has that person said, well, if I don't pass, I'd still use the women's anyway? Have they ever said that?
it does show that privilege, and I guess that when people do start to pass, that is a privilege that we have. I say we, as I just said then, because I can now go around the world and sort of blend in a lot, and I'm really grateful for that. And some may say that I am privileged because of that, and I understand where they're coming from. One thing I just like to always point out when I talk about my transition, if that's okay, is that
Black trans women are at the top of the intersectionality hierarchy. They are right now. One day, something else is going to take over. And those people are going to feel just as marginalized as everyone else does. Because that's how intersectionality works. Fuck that shit.
my surgeries and treatment haven't been on the NHS. It's all been funded privately by me through a private GP. I paid for it all. So when people call me privileged, it feels like they're insulting me because they're saying that I've been handed my transition on the plate. And honestly, I did have to fight to transition and to work really hard. I'm not saying that other people don't work hard, but I just wanted to put that out there, that it's never always been like a smooth, easy ride. That's all I wanted to say there. As I said at the start of the video, and I'm just going to sort of circle back to it, what that trans woman said in that initial video, well, I don't know because the rest of the video is not online anymore, but the two statements she said, I disagree with the first one where she said you have to pass between a women's bathroom because very few trans people can.
Okay, what do actual women think? Let's say a woman listens to that. What does she think as a person who the bathroom is for, as opposed to you, a person who the bathroom is not for?
And women can fully pass without a shadow of a doubt. And I'm talking
a boyfriend paid for a lot of it. I mean, I hate getting into these kind of things. Like, yeah, some people can afford all these surgeries and will get them. Some people can't. I don't know, man. If you want a surgery, you're probably going to have to fucking find some way of paying for it. Otherwise, you're not getting that. Like, that's just how it is. I'm so bored of, like, talking about fucking privilege, to be honest. All of these people are privileged that they don't actually have to fucking think about this shit as a woman.
A trans woman who possibly transitioned during puberty. That's when trans women pass fully. What I will say about passing, because very few trans people women can fully pass without a shadow of a doubt. And I'm talking a trans woman who possibly transitioned during puberty. That's when trans women pass.
That's not necessarily the case. There's passing trans women who started after puberty. There's plenty of non-passing trans women who started in puberty or before puberty. Like, people always use, like, examples like fucking Hunter Schafer or Kim Petras or whatever. People who are constantly being, like, touched up, like, covered in makeup, have, like, teams to style them and stuff like that. That ain't the average person. I've seen plenty of people who transition during puberty who don't pass any better than they probably would have, to be honest. Maybe slightly. But then what other, like, health conditions they're going to have? What other problems they're going to have?
Fully. What I will say about passing as a whole for trans women specifically is, from what I've sort of learned and seen online, if you transition after full male puberty, generally it is hard to fully pass because the broad shoulders, the deep voice, the Adam's apple, the facial structure, the testosterone does ravage the body during male puberty. So unless someone transitions during or at the start of puberty, it's really hard to fully pass.
I don't like this at all. You're kind of promoting transitioning children. But what does this person think about, like, trans kids? I can't remember. Has she ever, like, talked about this? I'm not seeing anything. Maybe this is one of those things. It's so controversial that she knows if she actually talks about it, she'll lose a bunch of viewers or something. I don't know. But think about what you're promoting here. Think about what message this is putting out there.
As a trans woman, so does that mean no?
Like, bear in mind, you can say, well, passing shouldn't be your number one priority. It just is for most trans people. What do you think gender dysphoria is? Like, isn't the best way if you're gender dysphoric to resemble the other sex? Won't that deal with, like, basically all of it? The problem is just most of us won't, ever. Did she discuss it with Buck? I have no idea. I couldn't find anything. So I don't really know what this person's opinion on trans kids is. But that's what you're promoting, in effect. You're saying, well, if you want to pass, you got to start early.
Trans women should use a female bathroom in her argument. And then going off what the other content creator said about her not fully passing.
Like, none of that matters anyway. You're saying, well, only a few trans people have the privilege of passing. Well, then maybe they shouldn't use the women's bathroom. Maybe that's just something that is not for them.
again, then is that not defeating her own argument? And passing is very subjective. It depends, it's in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? Because who I think passes, some might say not. Some people tell me that they would never know I'm trans, while other people say I knew straight away as soon as I saw it. So it's pros and cons, it's a bit of both. It's a really grey area, that bit. What I don't like though is what I do agree with, sorry, on the other side of that is when she said you have to put in effort to transition, to go into the female bathroom. I 100% agree with that.
Said she's against transitioning children. Okay, interesting.
A man with a beard can't just walk in and say I identify
But also thinks it's the only way to guarantee passing. Mixed messages.
as a woman. I'm sorry, that is just my opinion. It's always been my opinion. That hasn't.
Stop apologizing. Fuck me. Stop apologizing for your opinion. Every time you say something remotely controversial to anyone. Oh, I'm sorry, it's just my opinion. Stop doing that. Please, I beg you.
Changed. So I think there has to be some semblance of a transition to show that you are trying to emulate what your ideology is of a woman. I hope that makes sense.
Wasn't keen, if I'm honest. Wasn't keen. A lot of male people not really giving a fuck what women actually think about this when it's their bathroom. I don't really like that very much. I always hear this argument among trans women. It always gets me a little put out. It's always about their comfort, what they want, but no one's thinking of the feelings of the women, their comfort, how they feel, and that gets me cross. To be honest, that type of energy screams man all day long. That entitled attitude. I think we as women are generally accepting. We shouldn't be told who has the right in our spaces. So when trans women get aggressive, entitled attitude, that women feel discomfort in our cup. So I'd say not so much about passing as about the energy you give off. If you go on male energy, you'll face resistance from women when you demand that you're entitled to use their spaces. Alexis, I take no issue whatsoever sharing a female space with you as you do not have that energy. But others I've seen are still putting an effort. I'd still take exception to. I think the best woman a trans woman can do is be accepted by other women, to respect their comfort and not yell demands where they're entitled to go. I agree with that. If you make no effort to pass, if you're always doing is wearing a dress and makeup, you got 5 o'clock shadow, you have no business walking into a ladies' room. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of males arguing over who should have the right to have women's spaces, but who's talking to the women here, you know? I feel it's important that trans women show they're respecting and considering women and girls' feelings and their comfort in this debate. Otherwise, it comes off as trans women feeling being entitled regardless of whether they pass or not. Yeah. What women were involved in this conversation? Absolutely none. I'm in an LGBT space, then use the women or men's bathroom. If you go into open queer space, you kind of know what you're walking into. I'm in a normal or family space. I agree you need to be putting effort in. Tired of people castigating biological women for wanting to feel safe. Seems crappy these women get trashed for feeling unsafe and expressing it. Why are the trans women's feelings to pass carry more weight than the biological women's feelings? I guess that's where intersectionality comes in again. Well, I'm against all that shit. I'm against intersectionality. I'm against saying, well, your feelings matter less than other people's. I'm against saying, well, your voice has less weight to it than other people's. Majority PCOS women shave, though, stop the cap. Yeah, mentioning PCOS is fucking retarded. They need to stop doing that. Women with PCOS aren't your, bat to smack people over the head with every time they suggest that someone who looks like a man shouldn't be in a women's toilet, you know what I mean? Feminine energy. I mean, again, if you're talking about energy, some people are going to be okay going in the women's toilet, some aren't. That's life. It's not fair. Some people are going to be excluded from some things that others aren't. That's just how life is, man. We're not going to be able to make access to women's toilets equal for literally everyone, regardless of sex. At that point, there is no point in having, women's toilets. PCOS, not everyone has it, but most do. Someone said that?
I'm wrong, but PCOS, the side effect of having PCOS, not everybody has it, but most do, has to do.
Just wanted to point out that is incorrect. I don't know if they think that they're saying that lots of women have PCOS. I mean, fundamentally saying, women with PCOS have facial hair and they can use the bathroom, therefore I can be a man with my facial hair grown out and I can use the women's toilet is completely nuts. That's a ridiculous thing to say. And anyone saying that kind of shit deserves to be shamed for it, quite frankly. Let's stop with this messaging. We don't need to have children making these lifelong decisions.
Puberty, it's really hard to fully pass as a trans woman. So does that mean no trans women should use a...
Yeah, this is what I was saying earlier. About 1 in 10 women that have PCOS. I have PCOS, I don't have any more hair, masculine features than the average woman. Yeah, that's the other thing. Not everyone has those symptoms. Like mention of Lily Tino. I mean, listen, taking pictures is a stupid thing to do. Lily Tino is giving the worst kind of visibility to trans people in this kind of issue, for sure. I don't know. I wasn't blown away by this. I think all we want to do is hear from other trans people as opposed to women. Almost like we don't actually care what women think. We just want to shout at each other for having different standards. And the second reaction that we saw, that person is completely off the mark. Take the argument at face value. Understand what they're talking about is. You should look like a woman if you're using a woman's bathroom, and decide whether you agree with that or not. You can talk about privilege, that some people genetically are fortunate, some aren't. Well, life's like that, you know what I mean? Doesn't fucking matter. Anyway, there we go, Alexis Blake. Wow, amazing. I mentioned that Heather Herbert is a man yet.